You are standing at a door. It is the only thing you have ever done well. You are a man whose whole purpose, whose entire trained life is to open a door for the right person and to keep it shut against the wrong one. And tonight, on the 24th of August in the year 410, in the 863rd year since the founding of the city, you are going to fail at the one thing you know. Not because you are weak, because the door no longer matters. Somewhere across the sleeping bulk of Rome, 3 miles to the north, another gate is about to swing inward in the dark, and after that every door in the city is only a piece of wood. You don't know that yet. It is the hour before dawn, and you are simply cold. Let me tell you who you are, because the chroniclers will not. They will write about the senators. They will write about Alaric, the man at the walls. They will write about the bishop in distant Hippo, who will sit down 2 years from now and answer this single night with a book that takes him 13 years to finish. They will not write your name. So I will give you one, and I will be honest with you about it. The name of my hero is composite, drawn from the household inscriptions on Roman tombstones, from the slave lists that survive on stone, from the letters of men like Symmachus, who counted their doorkeepers among their property. I have built him out of real people. His name is Tertius, the third, a name you give a slave the way you number a tool, because 2 others came before him, and it was not worth the trouble of thinking up something new. You are perhaps 40. You were born in this house, on the Aventine Hill, in the great rambling domus of the senator Faltonius. That is a real Roman family name, the Faltonii, though the man himself in this story is a reconstruction. You have never been more than a day's walk from where you stand. You have opened this door at least 30,000 times. You know the exact weight of it against your shoulder, the way the lower hinge has groaned for 11 years, and no one has ever fixed it, because fixing it is below the dignity of the house and beneath the notice of the master. You know which floor stone rocks. You know the sandal makes on marble and the different sound a bare foot makes, and you can tell with your eyes shut whether the person crossing the threshold is family or client or trouble. That skill is about to be worth nothing. The cold I mentioned is not winter cold. It is August. Rome in August is an oven of brick and travertine, and by noon the streets will shimmer and the dogs will lie flat in the shade of the porticos with their tongues out. But it is the hour before Lord's, before the first grey light, and the Aventine is high and the wind comes off the Tiber, carrying the smell of the river, which this summer is not a good smell. The river smells of the dead. Not many, not yet. But Rome has been hungry for a long time, and the hungry die quietly, and the city has not been able to bury all of them at the proper pace, and so the smell sits over the lower districts like a lid. You should understand the hunger, because everything tonight grows out of it. This is the 3rd time Alaric has come. The first was 2 years ago, in 408. He shut the roads, he shut the river, he sat his Goths down around the walls, and he waited, and Rome, the city that fed itself on grain ships from Africa and Egypt, the city of perhaps 800,000 mouths, down from 1 million in the days the textbooks remember, Rome discovered that it could not eat its own marble. The price of a measure of grain went up and up. Then it could not be bought at any price. Then the Senate, in its panic, scraped together gold and silver and pepper. 5,000 pounds of gold, the chronicler Zosimus says, and 30,000 pounds of silver, and 3,000 pounds of pepper, that absurd and precious dust from beyond the edge of the world, and paid the barbarian to go away. He went away. He came back. He came back a 2nd time and a 3rd, because each time the imperial court at Ravenna, where the boy Emperor Honorius hid behind his marshes, refused to give Alaric the one thing he actually wanted, which was not gold. It was land, a home for his people, a title. To be let inside the system instead of left starving outside it. And here is the thing the school lessons leave out, the thing you would do well to hold on to through this whole long night. Alaric did not want to destroy Rome. He had served Rome. He had commanded Roman troops. He was, by his own lights, more loyal to the idea of the empire than the men who ran it. He wanted in. They would not let him in. And so, 3 times, he closed his hand around the throat of the eternal city and squeezed. You have lived inside that squeezing hand for 2 years. You move now because you have heard something. The soft scuff of the master's body slave coming down from the upper floor with a lamp. And you straighten against the doorpost the way you have straightened 10,000 mornings. And you compose your face into the smooth nothing that a doorkeeper wears. And the small flame comes wavering across the atrium and throws the household gods into orange relief in their little shrine by the pool. The pool is empty. The fountain has not run since the aqueducts were cut. You have grown used to the silence where the water used to be. It is one of the small thefts the siege has committed. Not the food, not the dying, but the missing sound of water, which a Roman house is supposed to have the way a body is supposed to have a pulse. He's awake, the body slave says. His name is Crescens, and he is younger than you, and frightened in a way he tries to hide. He wants the door watched. He says there's noise from the north. There's always noise from the north, you say. It is the kind of thing you are allowed to say to Crescens and to no one else. But you both stand still for a moment and listen. And under the river wind, under the cough of someone dying 3 houses down, there is something. A long way off. A sound the city has not made in 800 years, and so neither of you recognizes it. Not really, though your body recognizes it before your mind does, and the hair stands up on your forearms. It is the sound of many men, very far away, all moving at once in the dark. I want to be careful here, because this is the place where a story like this wants to lie to you. It wants me to tell you that you knew, that you felt the weight of history on the threshold, that you understood Rome was ending. You did not. No one did. That is the truth that the great sad sentence, written later by the priest Jerome in his cell in Bethlehem, actually contains. Jerome, who got the news weeks afterward and put down his pen and wept, and wrote that the city which had taken the whole world was itself taken. Even he only understood it afterward. On the night itself, you understood nothing. You thought, noise from the north. You thought, the master is nervous again. You thought, the way the hungry think, mostly about the small lump of bread you had not eaten and whether you could make it last until evening. Rome cannot fall. That is what you believe, the way you believe the sun comes up. Rome has not been taken by an enemy since the Gauls came over the walls in the time of the ancestors, 390 years before the birth of Christ. 800 years ago, a length of time so vast, it is not even history to you. It is legend. It is the same shelf as the wolf and the twins. Cities fall. Carthage fell. Rome made sure of that. Jerusalem fell. Provincial places, eastern places, places that were always going to fall. But not Rome. Rome is the thing that other cities fall to. The walls are the great walls of Aurelian, 12 miles of them, 50 feet high in places, and behind them sits the Senate and the temples and the 800 years. And you, Tertius, standing at a senator's door, with your shoulder against 11-year-old wood, are as certain of Rome's permanence as you are of your own hands. You will lose that certainty before this story ends. By the reconstruction of the historians, by Orosius and Sozomen, and the bitter old letters of the men who lived it, you will lose it tonight. The master comes down himself. This is unusual. Faltonius is 61, a man who has held the consulship in name, if not in any real power. A man whose ancestors' wax masks line the wall of the tablinum, and whose dignity is the last thing in this house the siege has not been able to take. He comes down in a plain tunic, not the toga. There is no one to perform for at this hour, and his feet are in house slippers, and his face in the lamplight is the face of a man who has not slept. He stops in the middle of the atrium, by the dry pool, and he tilts his head, and he listens to the thing in the north. You watch him decide what it is. You watch a clever, frightened, proud old man perform, for himself, the trick that all of Rome is performing tonight. He files the sound under something survivable. A disturbance. A grain riot, perhaps. There have been grain riots. The Goths probing a gate and being driven off, as they have been driven off before. He does not let himself think the other thought, the true one, because the true one cannot be thought by a man like him without the whole structure of his life cracking, and he is too old and too tired to let it crack at this hour. Bar the door, he says to you. No one in, no one out, until I say. Not even a client, especially not a client. He means, especially not the men who owe me nothing now, who will come scratching at the door of a senatorial house the moment they smell that the order of things has slipped, looking for what they can carry off. He understands his own people, the Romans, far better than he understands the men in the north. Do you hear me, Tertius? I hear you, master. And here is a small thing, and I would not trust a storyteller who pretended it was a large thing. He used your name. Faltonius has owned you for 40 years, and he uses your name perhaps 4 times a year. He used it now. I think, I am reconstructing, I am guessing, but I have read enough of these households to guess well. I think it was fear. I think in the dark, with that sound coming, he wanted to put a name to one solid thing in his house, and the nearest solid thing was the man at the door. You bar it. The great oak beam drops into its iron brackets with a sound you have made 30,000 times, a domestic, comfortable, end-of-the-day sound. The house is sealed. The master goes back up to wake his wife, his daughter, his grandchildren, to gather the silver and the gold solidi sewn into belts, to do the small, useless preparations of the rich in a catastrophe. And you take your place against the doorpost, and you wait for dawn, and you listen to the sound in the north, which is not going away. It is, in fact, coming closer. The grey light, when it finally seeps over the eastern hills and into the high windows of the atrium, falls on a city that looks, for 1 more hour, exactly like itself. The 7 hills, the temples, the great baths. The forum where the law has been spoken for 900 years. You cannot see any of it from inside the sealed house, but you can see it in your mind, because you have carried it in your mind your whole life, and you assume, the way you assume your own heartbeat, that it will be there tomorrow. By tomorrow's dawn, smoke will be standing over the Salarian quarter, and the 800 years will be over, and the world will not believe the news for a month. But that is tomorrow. Right now it is the first light of the 24th of August, and you are a man standing at a door, and your day is beginning. By the 3rd hour after sunrise, the heat is already pressing against the shuttered house, and the day has done what days do even at the end of the world. It is filled up with small, stupid, necessary tasks. This is the part the histories never give you, and it is the part I find I cannot stop thinking about. The Goths are 3 miles away, and the household still has to eat. The chamber pots still have to be carried out. Someone still has to draw the day's water from the cistern in the garden. The cistern, not the fountain, because the fountain is dead. And someone still has to decide how to ration what is in the cistern, because that is finite now too, and the master's grandchildren are small and they drink. The catastrophe does not cancel the morning. It runs underneath it, like the sound from the north, while the morning goes on top. You leave the door, you are allowed to leave it for short spells, the bar is down, and you cross to the kitchen because that is where the household gathers, where the news of the house pools. The cook is a woman called Marcellina, broad once and now not broad, because no one in this house has been broad for 2 years. She is doing the thing she has done every morning of the siege, which is making very little look like a meal. There is bread. I want to tell you what the bread is, because the bread is the whole story of the siege in one object. It is not the white bread of a senator's table, the bread of the good years, soft and salted. It is dark and dense, and there is something in it that should not be in bread. Ground beans, chaff. The chronicler Zosimus says that in the worst of the first siege, the bakers of Rome were grinding in things he will not name. And you eat it slowly, the way the hungry learn to eat, holding each mouthful until it goes to paste, because chewing is its own small meal. A senatorial house in Rome in a good year was a small kingdom. Faltonius owned estates in Africa and Sicily and Campania, thousands of acres, the grain of which fed this house and 100 others. His wealth was not coins in a box, it was land, and the land was across the sea, and the sea is where Alaric's gold and the cut roads and the burnt fields have put a wall as solid as the Aurelian walls themselves. The richest man on the Aventine, and you are all eating beans in the bread. That is the lesson the rich are learning this summer all over the city, that wealth is a promise other people keep for you, and when the other people stop, the gold in the belt is just yellow metal you cannot chew. Marcelina gives you your piece. She gives Crescens his. She gives, you notice, a slightly larger piece to the doorkeeper and the body slave than to herself, because you two are the ones who will be on your feet. And even now, even here, the household runs by its own logic of who needs strength today. There is a kind of love in it that no one would call love. You eat it standing up. There were people at the Subura gate of the garden before light, Marcelina says, low, not looking at you, trying the latch. I heard them go off when the dog barked. The dog, there is still a dog. It is thin as a rail, and it does not bark much anymore, because barking costs strength. But it barked. It's starting, she says. When they start trying the garden gates of the great houses, it's starting. She means the Romans. She means her own people. This is the thing the old master understood in the dark and said out loud, that before the Goths ever reach this door, his own city will come scratching at it. Order is a thing everyone agrees to pretend is solid, and the pretending is already coming apart, house by house, garden gate by garden gate, while the men on the walls still hold. I have to step in here and tell you something, because you, standing in that kitchen, cannot know it, and it changes how you should hear this whole day. The thing you are all braced against, the sack of Rome by a barbarian horde, the rape and the slaughter and the fire of every nightmare and every later painting, is not quite the thing that is coming. I am not going to soften it. Bad things are coming to this house and to this city, and some of them will happen to people you can see from where you stand. But the men in the north are not a horde. Alaric's Goths are a Christian people, Arian Christians, which is to say they follow the teaching of Arius that the Son is lesser than the Father, a teaching Rome's bishops call heresy, but Christians all the same, who pray and take communion and fear God. Alaric has held them together for years on the edge of starvation, and he is, by the accounts of the very Romans who hated him, a disciplined man commanding disciplined men. When this is over, the historian Orosius, a Christian writing within a few years, with every reason to make the pagans' catastrophe look like God's mercy, so weigh him as you like, will write that the sack lasted 3 days, that those who fled to the great churches were spared, that the basilicas of the apostles were declared places of sanctuary by Alaric himself and held. 3 days, not the end of the world. A disciplined, limited, terrible 3 days. But that is the view from above, the view I have and you do not. From inside this house, on this morning, you cannot tell a disciplined sack from the end of the world, because they begin the same way, with a sound in the north and a city that will not believe it. You go back to the door. You always go back to the door. And around the middle of the day, when the heat is a hammer and the streets outside have gone strange and quiet, too quiet, the quiet of a city holding its breath, someone knocks. Not scratches, knocks. A proper, known, rhythmic knock, 2 and then 1, and your body knows it before you do, the way it knew the bread, and you have the bar up and the door open a hand's width before you have decided to, because the knock belongs to Felix. Felix is a freedman. He was born in this house as you were, but Faltonius freed him 15 years ago, manumitted him, gave him the cap of liberty and a small sum and a place in the world as the patron's client. And now Felix is a free man with a free man's business and a free man's news, and he comes and goes through the city in a way you, who have never been free a single hour of your life, can only imagine. You and Felix grew up sleeping in the same row of pallets. He is the closest thing you have to a brother. The cap of liberty is the line between you, and it is the whole world wide, and neither of you has ever once mentioned it. He slips in and you bar the door behind him, and the first thing you see is his face, and the second thing you see is that he has been running. In this heat, a man does not run in this heat unless. "Where's the master?" he says. "Felix, what is it?" Where is he, Tertius? I have to. Tell me first. And he looks at you, and something in him gives, because you are the door, and he has known you his whole life, and the door is a place where men tell the truth before they go in to lie to the master. They're at the Solarian gate. His voice is not loud. That is the worst of it, how not loud it is. The whole of them. And there's word in the lower city. I had it from a grain man, and he had it from a man of the Anician house, so weigh it. There's word the gate won't hold from the inside, that someone will open it, tonight. The room goes very still. You hear the dog in the garden not barking. You hear your own blood. Who, you say, who opens it? And here is the thing, and the historians 100 years later will still be arguing about it, because two stories survive and they do not agree. One says it was treachery, that a great lady of the city, sick of watching her people starve, sent her household slaves down to the gate at midnight and had them cut the bar and let the Goths in to end it. The other says it was a ruse, that Alaric sent the Romans a gift of handsome slave boys who turned on the guards. Procopius, writing in the next century, hands down both, and I will not choose between them, because I was not there and neither were you, and a man who tells you he knows for certain which story is true is selling you something. What you need to hear, standing at your master's door, is only the part that is the same in both. The gate is going to be opened from the inside. By slaves, by people exactly like you. It won't be us, Felix says, watching your face, reading it the way only a man who slept in your row can read it. Tertius, it won't be this house, it won't be your hand, but you are already somewhere else. You are thinking the thought that has just arrived, the thought that is going to sit in your chest for the rest of this day and the rest of your life, however long that is. You are thinking, it could be. Not you, you would not, but someone like you, with hands like yours, who learned the same trade you learned, the opening and the shutting of doors, is going to stand in the dark tonight at the great gate of the city and lift the bar. The one skill, the thing you were made for, and he is going to use it to end Rome. I have to tell the master, you say, and your voice comes out level, because 40 years of the door have taught you that much, to keep your voice level when the floor is going. Wait here. You leave Felix in the atrium by the dry pool, and you go up to find the old man, and the whole way up the stairs the day is still going on around you, small and stupid and necessary. A child crying somewhere, the smell of Marcelina's thin soup, a grandchild's wooden horse abandoned on a step where you nearly tread on it. The whole vast, ordinary machinery of a house, running on 3 miles and a few hours from the open gate. The old man did not believe you. That is what I have to tell you about the rest of the afternoon, the long, airless hours between the news and the dark. You told him, you stood in the tablinum under the wax masks of his ancestors, the imagines, the cupboard of dead consular faces that is the proudest object in the house, and you told him what Felix told you, the gate, the inside hand, tonight. And Fultonius looked at you with the particular contempt a very frightened man keeps for the messenger, and he told you it was rumour, gutter talk, a freedman's panic, and that the walls of Aurelian had held for 130 years and would hold tonight, and that he would hear no more of it. Then he turned back to the desk where he was, even now, even today, sorting documents, deeds to the African estates, the proofs of a wealth that was on the far side of a closed sea, as if the right piece of papyrus could be produced at the gate and the Goths made to honour a property line. I am not mocking him. I want to be careful that you understand I am not mocking him. What he was doing in that room was the same thing you were doing at your door, the same thing all of Rome was doing on the last afternoon. He was holding on to the one competence he had, the one thing that had always worked, and he was using it to keep out a thought too large for the room. Yours was wood and iron. His was law and lineage and the 800 years. Both of you were guarding a threshold that was about to stop mattering, and neither of you could do anything else because it was who you were. The daughter found you on the stairs as the light was going long and gold. Her name is Proba, another real name, a name the women of these senatorial families really carried, though this proba is mine, and she is perhaps 19, married already, with a child of her own, a boy of 2 who is the wooden horse on the step. She has the look the whole house has now, the hollow under the eyes, but she is young, and the young carry it differently. She stopped you, which the daughters of the house do not do, and she said, "Tertius, is it true?" And you had a choice, the first real one of the day. You could give her the master's answer, the smooth nothing of the door, rumour, gutter talk, all is well. Or you could give her the truth, which would frighten her, and which she had no power to do anything about, and which it was emphatically not your place to give. "Keep the boy close to you tonight," you said. "And if there is noise, if there is real noise in the house, take him to the church, to Peter's, across the river. Run for the church and don't stop and don't look at anything." You don't entirely know why you said it. You would have been beaten for it in a normal year, a slave giving instructions to the daughter of the house. But it was not a normal year, and some part of you, the part that had heard Felix say the basilicas might be sanctuary, the part that does not appear in any chronicle, but that I am certain was there because it is in every human being, had decided that this one thing, this one small redirection, was within your power, and you spent it. She looked at you for a moment. Then she nodded once, and she went to find her son, and you went down to your door. Night came. It comes early to a sealed house. You sat against the doorpost with the bar down and the lamp guttering low to save oil, and you listened. And for a long while there was almost nothing, the city holding its breath, and you thought, you let yourself think, because it was dark and no one could see your face, about the man at the great gate, the one with hands like yours. You wondered if he was frightened. You wondered if he believed, the way the master believed in his law, that opening the gate would end the starving, that letting the dark in was a mercy, that it was the right thing and not the worst thing. You will never know who he was, but you sat with him in the dark for hours, the two of you, the openers of doors, on either end of the dying city. It was past midnight when it came. Not a crash. I want you to have it the way it was, and the way it was, by every account, was almost gentle at first, and then not. A horn, far off in the north, a long, low note that was not a Roman note, and your body was on its feet before your mind, again, the same animal knowing that had run all through this day. Then more horns, and then, rolling down off the high northern districts toward the river, toward you, a sound the city had not made in 800 years, and would never fully unmake again. The sound of Rome being entered. Not screaming, not at first. A vast, confused roar, like surf, like wind in a forest. The sound of tens of thousands of people all understanding the same thing in the same minute. The gate was open. The Salarian gate was open. It was true, it had been true all along, and somewhere up there, a man with hands like yours had lifted a bar, and the 800 years had come down with it. The roar came closer. You stood at your door, and you did the thing you were made for, the only thing. You checked the bar. You put your shoulder to the great oak beam in its iron brackets, the beam you had dropped 30,000 times, and you felt how thin it was. That is the truth no one tells you about a door. From the inside, on an ordinary night, it is the edge of the world. On this night you felt, with your whole body, that it was a stick of wood across a hole, and that the only thing it had ever really kept out was people who had agreed to be kept out. The household woke and gathered behind you in the atrium, in the dark, because the master would not let a lamp be lit now. You heard them, Marcelina's breathing, the grandchildren whimpering and being hushed, the old man's voice trying for command and finding only a whisper. You heard Proba, and you heard the boy, and you were glad, in some animal corner, that you had told her about the church. Then the street outside filled with running, with shouting in Latin. Romans, your own people, fleeing or looting or both, it is the same sound. And torchlight came swinging under the door, and a fist hit the wood, and a voice, a Roman voice, screamed to be let in, and behind it more fists, more voices. The master breathed, Don't, Tertius, hold it. And you held it, your shoulder to the bar, because that was the order and that was the trade, and the people on the other side of your door were not Goths, they were Romans, and you held the door of the rich against the panic of the poor, and you do not, even now, all these centuries later, know if that was right. And then a different sound. The Roman voices scattering, a heavier tread, a few words in a tongue you did not know, Gothic, low, almost calm, and the lighter snap of an order obeyed. And then a single blow on the door that was nothing like the fists, a blow that came through the oak and into your shoulder and into your teeth, the flat of something enormous, an axe head or a spear butt, testing. This was the moment. The whole day, the whole 40 years, the whole 800 had narrowed to this: a man at a door, and a man on the other side of it, and a bar of oak between them, and the question of the door, the only question you had ever been trained to answer: open or shut, the right person or the wrong one. And you understood, standing there with the blow still ringing in your bones, that the question had no meaning anymore. The bar would not hold against what was outside. If you held it, they would break it, and break you, and come in angry. If you opened it, they would come in. The door was over. The trade was over. The one skill of your one life had finally met the one situation it could not answer, and the answer, the true answer, the answer that the smooth nothing on your face had hidden from you for 40 years, was that the door had never really been yours at all. You had only ever been a thing the master put between himself and the world. The world was here now, and it did not care about the bar, and it was not going to ask your permission, and there was, at the absolute center of the catastrophe, a strange and terrible lightness in that the thing you were made for was finally, completely beyond your doing. Behind you, in the dark, the master said your name. The third time this day, the fourth time perhaps in 40 years. Tertius. Just that. You put your hand on the bar. You lifted it. I have thought about this for a long time, longer than is reasonable, and I want to give it to you straight. You lifted the bar. Not in surrender, and not in courage. Those are words for a chronicle, and this was not a chronicle. This was a man in the dark choosing the door he would die in front of. You lifted it because a broken door brings men in over splinters, and a broken man, and an open one lets you stand in it on your own feet, and the last thing that was yours to decide was how the world would find you standing. So you drew the bar, and you stepped back, and you opened your master's door for the last time, the way you had opened it 30,000 times, for whoever was on the other side. What was on the other side was 4 or 5 men, large, in mail, with the long swords and the round shields, lit red from the torches burning now all down the street. They were not what the paintings would later make them. They were tired men with starved cheeks, not so different from your own, men who had been hungry outside the walls as long as you had been hungry inside them, and the first one looked at you, at the open door, at the man standing quietly in it with empty hands, and something passed over his face that I can only call recognition. One opener of doors looking at another. They came in. I will not pretend to you that the night was gentle. The histories say 3 days, and 3 days of armed men in a conquered city is 3 days, and there was killing in Rome that night, and there was burning, and the gold was taken, and the great houses were stripped, and the Sallust gardens up by the gate burned, and the scorch is in the archaeology to this day. Faltonius lost everything that could be carried. The silver went, and the solidi out of the belts, and the wax masks of the ancestors were thrown down. That, I think, hurt the old man worse than the gold. The imagines of the consular dead scattered on the floor of the tablinum, 800 years of family broken like crockery. But here is the part the legend gets wrong, the part you lived and the painters never saw. The Goths in this house did not burn it, and did not kill the people in it who did not fight, and when a young soldier raised his sword in a back room, an older one, by the kind of scene the church historians describe from that night, stopped his hand and spoke of the sanctuary their king had declared. They were Christians, and their king had given an order, and discipline held even in the dark of the sack. Not everywhere, not perfectly, but in this house, on this night, it held. Proba had already gone. She had taken the boy at the first horn, the way you told her, out the garden gate and down the hill and across the river towards St. Peter's, where the great basilica stood outside the walls and where, by every account, thousands of Romans crowded that night and lived, because Alaric the heretic, Alaric the barbarian, had made the church of the chief apostle a place no Goth would touch. Orosius tells of the Goths themselves escorting Christians, even pagans who claimed sanctuary, through the burning streets to the basilicas.